As a project leader, it's easy for you to fall into the trap of getting everything done yourself. After all, you are responsible for the outcome of your project. But here's the reality. The fastest way for you to get burnout or to let your team down is trying to control everything. Delegation is not about sharing tasks, it's not just giving timelines to people. It's about building trust, it's about clarity, it's about giving your team that momentum that they need to work in every project. And in today's video, I'm going to show you ways in which you can delegate properly as a project manager. In that moment, you're going to achieve more. Ask yourself, what if you are not stuck in the details? What if you could just concentrate more on prioritizing the people, giving them that energy, focusing on strategizing? You will achieve more. So let's focus more on how you can delegate tasks to people while achieving more, while doubling the impact based on how you focus in your projects. And this is where most project managers face a lot of challenges, right? Delegation becomes a challenge for them because of fear. That fear of what if that person messes up, what if he doesn't do it the right way? That fear of control, that fear of, oh, what if I'm held responsible? What if this guy does this thing? What if this developer doesn't build the right website? They are going to hold me responsible. That fear. But you need to understand the psychology of delegating, the psychology of delegation. The first thing you need to understand is that when you start doing everything alone, it is going to feel efficient within a short time frame. But in the long term, your team is going to feel less focused. There is no ownership. There is no trust. There is so much dependency. They depend on you because you have always been doing it. But look at this other part. When you start delegating, what happens? Your team learns. There is ownership. There is accountability. They understand the race high matrix. Who is responsible for this? Who is accountable for this? Who are we consulting? Who are we informing? That's how the race high matrix works. You need to understand the psychology of this. And in the long term, there is productivity. Your productivity is going to multiply. Once you understand this psychology of the delegation, it makes your work more easier. It creates that ownership, that environment where you can boost your productivity. And here is the mistake that I've noticed with most project managers. When they are delegating, they just do it with no authority. They just go, oh, John, since you're the developer, do this. Mary, do this. No, that's not how you delegate. You delegate with authority. You show that you know what you're doing. You're giving this task to this person because you understand that they are an expert in that field. You need to know why you're giving this particular activity to this person. The second mistake I realized is that some of these project managers just assume. As a project leader, there is no assumption. You don't assume, right? You need to make sure that you understand where they are coming from. You don't assume that this person can do this thing and then you go ahead and start giving them tasks. No, it doesn't function that way. There is going to be a lot of confusion in that kind of team. People are going to just be frustrated because you assume that they can do something and they cannot do it. The next thing is micromanaging. As a project leader, when delegating, you need to understand their strengths and their weaknesses. You don't need to micromanage as a project leader. Delegation is a very strategic part of project management. And if you don't understand this part, it is going to affect so many other people. Once you start embracing that habit of doing everything yourself, being in control, being in charge, instead of being in charge of those who are in your charge as a project leader, it start affecting your project. But here is a mindset shift. To delegate effectively, you need to see it as a team multiplier. You need to see it as growing your team, growing your productivity. The first thing you do is, how can this person's strength contribute to the project? How can this person's talent, how can the skills, how can their tools multiply every other output that we want to bring in this team? And you need to ask yourself, what is it that I can only do myself? What is it that I, the project manager, can only be the one to do it? In that case, you focus more on that while distributing to the others, while delegating to the others. And the next thing you have to understand is that emotional intelligence plays a very big role in your project. It plays a very important role in the sense that you ask these few questions. Who needs more attention? Who needs more guidance? Who needs more resources? Who needs more training? Who needs more attention? Because that is where the difference comes in. If you are not paying attention to these details, it will be very difficult for you to improve in your projects. It will be very difficult for you to boost the productivity of your project. So you need to ask yourself as a project manager, how can I tailor it to match the strength of my team members? How can I tailor it to make sure that everyone doubles their output, everyone doubles their effort? So you look at a team where everyone is down here, you are up here. What you give to them is based on what you have analyzed. Analysis works very well with project management. Every other document that you submit, your stakeholder analysis, your risk analysis, that is the importance of all those things. You don't just do it for fancy. You don't just do it because you know how to use those tools, the Gantt chart. You break down your work using WPS. What are all those things for? That's information in which you are going to use eventually. So you need to make sure that you take all those information, tailor it, and match the needs of every other person that is working in your team. That is where you boost your productivity, and that is the power of delegation. And that is why I make sure that each time I'm communicating to my audience, I always give them some practical steps that they can start following from this very moment and implement them. So I'm going to give you 6 steps that you can follow to delegate properly with your team members. The first question you need to ask yourself when delegating is, what is it that I'm trying to achieve? So you ask yourself this question. Identify what you are trying to delegate. Then you start breaking it down. What is it that I can only be the one to do? What is it that I can share to my team member without paper guidance, without paperwork, in order to give them details so that they can do it? What is it that if I delegate to my team members, they will be able to grow? Once you have answered this question, go ahead and start delegating. The next thing is, which is the second step, is set proper expectations. Clarity matters in everything. You need to understand what are the resources that they need, what are the timelines, what are the guidance, what is the why behind what you're doing, what are the checkpoints after we have started from point A, where are we going to check ourselves, where are we going to meet again to find out, are we on track, are we using the map that we set for ourselves? It is very important in everything. The third thing is feedback, right? You need to get proper feedback. I earlier shared in my last video, if you have not watched it, check it. Feedback is very important. People see feedback as attacking their personality, which is not true. You need to take feedback as information. Take that information, turn it to clarity. Once you have that clarity, use it as a strategy. Feedback is very important in everything. You need to be vulnerable enough to accept the mistakes. You need to be conscious enough to give in feedback. Proper feedback is very important. That is what makes teams grow. If you want your team to grow, you need to be vulnerable. You have to listen, because that is what builds trust. That is what builds irresistible teams. Teams that can empower you in so many ways. The fourth is making sure that you review and adjust. You need to ask yourself or ask your team, what is it that went well? What can we improve? What can we do better such that next time we can delegate properly? So you need to ask yourself these questions. Once you have been able to have the answers, that is a proper way. That is the next step to making sure that your team comes out successfully. Reviewing and adjusting is a very important step, and that is the fourth step. The fifth step is making sure that you communicate clarity. Communication is very important. That is the number one skill that you need as a project manager. There is no way you are ever going to succeed in your project if you don't communicate with people, if you don't engage with them. Once they don't understand where you're coming from, that is where your project starts failing, even without starting. So the moment you make sure that you are starting your project, make sure that there is proper communication that brings clarity. The sixth point, which is very important, is stakeholder engagement. You need to make sure that you engage with your stakeholders. If you don't understand the value of your stakeholders, you are going to fail big time. It's like working for people that you don't know. It's like working for a team that you don't know if they exist or not. So you need to prioritize that. It's very, very important. Stakeholder engagement. It enhances your delegation, because you cannot delegate to people that you don't know. Once you know this person, once you understand them properly, you can delegate effectively. So I need you to keep this to yourself. Delegation is not easy. It's very stressful. It requires time. It takes your patience, your trust. But it's one of the most powerful ways that you can scale your impact as a project manager. When you delegate properly, your team grows. You see the impact of every other thing that you're doing. There is trust. there is continuity in every project that you work in. You realize that you don't just build trust, but you build that space where leadership becomes less stressful and become more of an inspiration to you. So if anything I've shared with you today resonated, if it sparked a thought, a question, or even just a feeling, then hit that subscribe button. And my promise to you alongside with my team is to consistently bring you real, honest, and valuable content that helps you figure out project management one conversation at a time. Thank you for being here.